Hello, wonderful people. It's your boy Hollywood Truth back. Today, I want to talk a little bit about microaggressions. These are something that black people deal with on a regular basis, sometimes implicit, sometimes unconscious, but it's really something we need to understand because in the behest of trying to become good allies, we have to be careful about our approach and asking black people to explain things or soften things that they want to know more about. So I'll start with a little bit of a definition. So, microaggressions, it's a statement or action or incident regarded as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as racial or ethnic minority. Others call them microassaults. The reality here is learning more about self, right? Our unconscious and implicit bias, it's why we think the way that we do. It's why we see things the way that we do. The ability to research and educate will help others understand why these things are not okay. Even without malice, microaggressions, they still sting, right? And it pains those who you oppress. So there's different types of microaggressions. One is called microassaults. These are conscious and intentional actions or slurs, such as using racial epithets, displaying swastika stickers, or deliberately serving a white person before a person of color in a restaurant, right? So it can be that simple but that obvious, and these are a little bit more verbal and meaningful at the end of the day. Micro insults, these are verbal or nonverbal communications that subtly convey rudeness and insensitivity and demean a person's racial heritage or identity. As an example, is an employee who asks a colleague of color how she got her job, implying she may not have landed through an affirmative action or a quota system. Not that she was prepared, not that she was the best fit for that. We're always looking for reasons why that decision might have been made. Micro invalidations, which can be tricky because we don't always notice them when they happen, right? These are communications that subtly exclude, negate, or nullify the thoughts, the feelings, or the reality of a person of color, including their experiences. For instance, white people often ask Asian Americans where they were born, conveying the message that they're perpetual foreigners, right, in their own land. So let's jump into these, right, in no particular order. And again, I speak freely, so I'm not trying to undercut or find a way to try to get around the reality, but I talk about it in a way where we can have a conversation about it at the end of the day. So the first one on here is I have a couple of black friends. These don't bother me indirectly at times because I've lived long enough to understand at the end of the day where people are coming from, but you still have to understand the root, right? So having a couple friends is not something to throw into an argument based on getting a better understanding of a black person or understanding more about what they went through. First of all, you have to ask yourself why that's a relevant comment. Why did you feel like in that point you needed to say that? And how is that going to stall the conversation? Does mentioning you have black friends help or hurt the conversation? Or it is another version of someone thinking they know our struggles because they have a few black friends? It's okay to say that you have them, but it's not okay to use that as a martyr. Did those black friends grow up where you did? Or did you venture to the hood to see what it was really around, to be around black folks and the pain, the lack of resources, the ability to live like everyone else? Or did those friends grow up in the same neighborhood you did with better opportunities? And you feel like that's the avenue that you really need to understand when there's a whole lot more to the picture. Do you have real conversations with those friends? Honest conversations, not just about what you want to know, but acting as if it's important for you to understand how to be a good ally. Do you allow those black friends to be honest in their differences so we don't throw up roadblocks in a conversation thinking that we know. Right? My mother is white, and she raised 2 young black men. But the reality is, she still doesn't know what it means to be black. And she understood her white privilege, even raising us in a neighborhood that was poor, allowing us to identify with the people that everybody was going to say that we identified with, and all the struggles that came with that. But there was still that understanding of white privilege. If she walked in somewhere without us, there was a different treatment in the way things went. If she walked in with us, people did a lot of staring and trying to figure out the back end. When we talk about black friends, I had some white friends too, growing up and building those relationships. But I had to be in honors classes or play sports unless they grew up in the hood, where some of them did. If they're picking a team in gym, I'd always be the first or second pick. If it came to a party at their house or a picnic in the backyard, that invite got lost. Good, bad, or indifferent, 1 or 2 black people will never tell the story of all black people. You could have grown up right next to and in the same neighborhoods as black people. But the future is still brighter. People are still more welcoming. Opportunities will be there more based on the privilege of being white, even if you're poor. The next one seems simple, shouldn't happen. A cashier skipping a black person in line. Let me bear down on this for you, because most people will think, well, they just didn't see him, right? Or it was an accident. Imagine the ability for others unlike you to continue to tear down what isn't right by making it seem as if it was an accident, or that we're overreacting, which I hear a lot. We see our invisibility in your world. It's not a secret. So in your mind, the cashier did not see the black person. In our minds, we are never seen or treated like others are. What if it was the 4th week in a row that same person went to 4 different stores and it happened? Would it still be a mistake? Because in those moments, you don't have to say, we don't want to serve you. You're showing us you do not. So now we have to find the comfortability to want to stay in that store and shop and spend the same kind of money that anybody else is. Why? See, it's not the fact or the act that occurs. It's the systemic abuse that has been finding ways to confirm that we are less than in every attribute of society. And where we take that and how we respond to others is on us. We can't use that as an excuse because that's what we've seen or that's how people have done it forever. Another one is, where are you from? Where were you born? It's hilarious when I hear people ask black folks that, because we're Americans. We were here. And a lot of us believe we were here a lot longer than anyone else was. So when you think about all the stuff that goes with it and being one of the first here in regard to our country, you would wonder why it was built on the backs of our labor, but the resources that were necessary were not given to us, except to build and make things better for other people. First and foremost, in America, most of the black people you encounter are from here. A lot of our history, as I said, goes back even further than yours. But again, you have to ask, how does this question help determine whether we are worthy of your allyship or not? Are there specific places that disqualify or promote further engagement with that person? If they mention they are from somewhere else and there is an interest in finding out more about it, there's nothing wrong with that at the end of the day. But please do not use it as a conversation starter. Build that trust with the person you're talking to before you take it to a personal level, or you start acting as if you're mesmerized by the things that they have or the way that they look because it's different than you. In most cases, blacks do not even want to divulge which street or town they live in, knowing that others will use it as a stereotype or use it against them, or talk about how everybody from that area is a thug, is a drug dealer, bad news, whatever words you want to use. I mean, you guys can be extremely descriptive at times, but it's really people living within the resources that they were given. As I've said in other videos, nobody in the hood wants to be poor. Nobody wants to look for job after job or work 2 or 3 of them just to make ends meet. Which means things have been easier for others. So if you make them somewhat easier for us, we'll show you at the end of the day that the hard work will be there. But it shouldn't be because we're getting an opportunity that most don't get. We got to get away from the first black person to do everything. If black people were allowed to do what they wanted as the rest of society to some degree, and something popped up where a black person did it for the first time, then I'm all in. But if it's things that we weren't allowed to do, and the fact that we are now is the reason that we're becoming the first to do it, you can leave that on the side, parked with all the other nonsense. The bottom line is, whether it's a different country in an impoverished neighborhood, the person behind where they come from is what you should focus on. Not where, not who, the person that you're trying to get to know. There are different elements of poor. Right? So again, trying to get one even to speak for everybody that has been in the worst circumstances is only going to have some of the stories that you need to know to be better in your ability to be a better ally moving forward. Another is you speak so articulate, or you speak really good English. First of all, I got to give a shout out to people who come to a different country and try to learn that language, and find a way to. But we take onus, and sometimes accents are appealing, right? So we're not really asking because we're trying to be negative. But again, how is that a conversation starter? Why is that a question that you wouldn't ask anyone else? So articulate compared to what? Other black people? Because again, that goes from a compliment to an insult, right? Which makes it fall into these you think you're being nice. But we do feel like other black people are articulate that we grew up around. We just don't know if they had the opportunity to get in front of people and prove that. Some of our most rooted words come from Spanish dialects. Other countries are the root word or the root meaning. So why is that your representation or your presentation of how things should be said and how people should talk be the right way? The only answer to that is because everybody's always told you were right. We already have to bend over backwards in trying to learn our history and figuring out where we really come from or what our history truly is. But you're asking us to change what we do, how we dress, how we do our hair, how we speak, because it manners in a way that you've always known or that society has always known. Where if we allow our differences to be understood, we'll realize how brilliant this country truly is. When you say things like that, what we hear is most of your heritage cannot speak articulate. So a compliment like that proves to us that you've not been around black people enough to make that kind of comment. I read books, and as black authors, we use an abundance of big words to prove, right, that we can write on the level of others, that we are as articulate as other writers. I keep it simple in my writing and easy to understand with words that will settle in and allow you to internalize and continue reading the book without having to grab the dictionary in between to figure out what certain words might be. Saying things like this also shows that you're not informed on why that stereotype is there. And again, the systemic culture that did not want us to be as smart as others or give us the resources to be able to read at a very young age and things of that sort. The issue is the school system is broken as well. They're teaching our kids a history that has nothing to do with who and what they know. So when they're disinterested, instead of pointing out that they're disinterested, ask why. If in a classroom of people, there are 3 or 4 of us that have no correlation to the history that you teach, how alone do you think that they feel every single day? And this is school. This isn't work where it's the norm and people can get away with it because they're adults. It's school, where our children expect to become powerful and empowered by what they realize or what they figure out in regard to our black heroes. Not just trying to be the heroes that you feel are contentious, that you feel should be celebrated. If you're not doing the research or fighting the system that has so long fought against us, then you have no right to make comments like that. That kind of education will slim down some of the mistakes that I'm talking about here. Questions or comments we're talking about today. Another one, can you tell me how to say X in your language? Specific words, whatever it may be. This is a simple answer. Just don't ask. Right? If the person you're talking with is from a different country or background, they have also been challenged with learning your language, right? Every word of it. And probably called out in times when they did speak their language or were around other people and wanted to speak to someone that speaks the same language as them. Call them out in one for speaking that and you don't understand it, but then tell them to help you understand a one-off word that you might be curious about. I think the reality is we can Google, right, or use the translator app to figure out one word. We don't need to walk up to strangers and feel like that's a way to start a convo or to get close to someone. Knowing that they have to learn our language and its meaning, let's absorb that part of it and applaud that for a second. One of my favorites, when I look at you, I do not see color. This is an easy escape for those who are unconscious to what's going on around them. It's an easy out to say, well, I don't treat anybody different, so why should I pay attention to people that do? This may be one of the top mistakes made by others. Do not think that we do not understand the intent here. And that is, you treat all people the same, so you do not see color, right? We get where you're coming from. The issue is that we need you to see color. Not as a way to treat us differently, not for pity, but as a way for you to truly understand there is a difference, even if we all don't want to admit it. If you do not understand the difference in race and color, then you cannot truly be an ally in next steps. So, unintently you're saying, well, I do not see color, meaning you have not seen anything or understand anything that has impacted us differently, why we're different, and how we got to where we are. So again, to those who say it because they want to be allies, because they haven't treated black people differently or people of other ethnicities, I respect where you're coming from. But the only way to be a great ally is to see our differences, our struggles, our pain, and understand that, okay, I didn't see it before, but I do now. It's not right. And if you take today on and start speaking up when you need to, then you're an ally. But if you need us to explain everything, if you want us to continue to rip off those Band-Aids or peel off those scabs and relive that pain on a regular basis, then don't approach it this way. Look at ways to connect to people. There's a lot of resources to find out indignant information that you might want to know. You can always look those things up before, you insult someone else by asking or by saying it out loud. And again, if you don't understand the difference in race or color, then you cannot truly take next steps with us. It's impossible to. Because you'd like to live in a world where it seems as if it hasn't been different. And even though you know it, if you don't say anything about it, it won't impact you. But it does continue to impact us and the allies that you've built. It's also looked at as a way to camouflage, right? It's what most people do. Businesses, schools, they've come up with these regulatory scenarios, but the reality is they're not keeping up with the Joneses. They're not taking the risks to be the person that does something different, to be the person that is a pioneer of change. And just because they didn't see 10 other businesses do it, they decided that they were going to, because that's what their organization was about, through and through. We camouflage everything to make it seem like it's becoming better. It's getting better. Even the laws, if you look at the fine print, the way the Constitution was written, it didn't include us. And honestly, it still doesn't at times. So we like to call people out who call us out as a country. We love this country. Maybe love it more than a lot of you do. But it doesn't love us back the same way. By denying what's really going on and saying I don't see color, it allows you to try to simplify it with good intent. And that may not make you the problem, but it also shows that you're not part of the solution. If you do not see color, you're either scared to admit you do, or haven't really paid attention to our pain and struggle. If you cannot see us and accept us for who we are, if you do not see that color as a barrier and want to be a part of what they see when it comes to color, you deny us the ability to be judged fairly in all that has been taken, never given, and lost because of our color. If you cannot truly see our differences, then you'll never truly see us. Another is, you're a credit to your race. Has anyone ever said this to you? And if they did, what would you think of the statement as a white person? What is this person supposed to think about how you feel about the rest of their race, especially if their family is black? Those who are oppressed and fought for rights to live somewhat normal are the credits to our race. But they're not considered heroes. They just fought for things that the normal person had, so they became heroes in that aspect. The way they had to carry themselves, the way they had to navigate to be somewhat normal or try to live life, period, those are the true heroes. They'll never be talked about because they weren't presidents or leaders or considered leaders. But how strong of a leader do you have to be to grow up where we did, to have nothing, to be able to get to where you want to be? Yeah, that's real talent. Start paying attention to it. Because again, we have the abilities and the opportunities to help people get better. So if it's about the education, learning more, then put the host on the organization for that. But our will to win cannot be matched. Our understanding of doing more with less and being as creative as possible to make things right, even if it's to come up with a meal, those are real heroes. You know, you allow stereotypes and stories at times that you have heard to become your true beliefs. I would not have another conversation with this person unless they found out who some of our true heroes were in our race and came back to me in that conversation with some education and some research that was done. Because that's more important than why they look at it the way they do. Right? The more you learn, the more you see behind the scenes that it's not about people who don't want to do more. You know, I hear lazy things. Those are all excuses. And your ability to make yourself feel better about having more resources and honestly, maybe not doing as much as we would have done with those same resources. So if you've already had them, why can't we have them? Why can't we have more? Not money, not giving us anything, just more opportunities, more understanding of the opportunities that are available and why we may not fit that mold at this point. Another good one is, there is only one race, the human race. This is a statement that a lot of people have fallen away from and falls into the colorblind scenario. But either there has been too much proof to tuck away, or you've blinded yourself completely around what is real what we have seen every day for most of our lives. Some say it with hope and belief that it can be. Even they are wrong in saying it, and maybe they should just say, I hope that one day we will all be one human race, because they are taking steps to help make it happen. Right? Steps to help make it happen, not just saying it out loud. Because they stop ignoring the signs and hoping that they can get on the front line with us. The culture and pride of different backgrounds is what will continue our journey. Too great. But until then, we have to respect each other and better understand our differences and know why they are important to those different than us. Our differences will make us stronger, while our similarities will honestly surprise you. I've done settings and work with other companies where people get into breakout rooms. They have conversations and they realize that there are some similarities to who they are and how they grew up and things that they did. Yes, we're different because we may not have grown up in the same places, but our wants, needs, our families, everything we think about is to be better, to get better, to have the opportunity to tell our children, you can be anything you want to be, without thinking about our shortfalls or our neglect in that process, still having enough energy to build them up to think that. Because hopefully by then it will be true. And it'll be important to everybody and not just the parents of those who are minority. As a white woman, I know what you go through as racial minority. This gets overrun at times, I think, and I do believe that those oppressed do have to learn to work together, right? Because we give people a chance to pick us apart a little bit if we challenge separately. They will find reasons and continue to camouflage, as I said earlier. So it is good to work together. But what I would say about this statement is, as a white woman, you understand oppression against white women. Unfortunately, not even close to what black women face. You believe because a white man hindered or oppressed you, we are all the same. Oppression of any kind is inexcusable, but trying to compare oppression as the same is exhausting for black people when you say it. We're not saying that you don't understand any of it, right? Because women have been through it too. But don't try to appeal to the masses and make it the same if you've never been in that struggle or had to understand it. You don't have to be oppressed equally to be an ally. Just remember that even in being a white woman, you still have the privilege of being white. And that means something even in your worst moments. We would probably appreciate being considered or being given the resources necessary to be confident about that opportunity. You are oppressed as women, but we are voided and invisible to most of the world. Saying you know what we're going through means you're not truly aware of our past or our present. It's like being upset because you dropped $20 and us hoping we find it. The bottom line is comparisons are weak if they have no foundation. Fight for women's rights as well. But know there is a difference between the two. And making comparisons like that just make it more painful for us. Why do you have to be so loud and aggressive? This is where you use adjectives and verbs to describe who we are without getting to know us. Loud versus what? Aggressive versus what? So when I'm asked those questions later in my career with a little bit more empowerment, I say, you mean passionate? Are you mistaking passion for aggression? Right? Defensive is a word I hear a lot. Imagine walking into a building every day and not seeing most like you get opportunities, and then realizing there's a chance you might lose your job. Right? You're going to the next place with your updated resume and having a conversation with no concerns about what may happen. right? Obviously losing the job and making sure you get another one, those types of things. Imagine being one of the only in one business and then thinking, okay, now I have to go to another one. Will I even be accepted to get the position? And what will that climb be like? What kind of hope will I see in that building? Will they have one or two more leaders? Maybe they're loud because you act as if they're invisible. Maybe they're aggressive because you don't hear them when they're calm and quiet. Imagine feeling unheard forever. And not because you're quiet, but because no one cares. Maybe being loud to you would be passionate and energetic in our culture, where we get excited about the smallest things because we're not given that much. So again, your mentality of who we are comes from just thinking it's another person and maybe treating them within the guidelines and the rules of what goes on. Listen, I don't care what business you are. I don't care if you have the best possible alignment with diversity at the end of the day. We're so far behind that we're playing catch up, and too many people are scared to make the moves that are necessary to do that. But you can't fit us into a box that looks pretty based on others that you brought in, because there may be other opportunities for you to learn about that person as well. So spend a good part of your life silenced, and then ask yourself how you feel when somebody says you're being too loud, or you're being too aggressive, or you're being too defensive, when our culture has been ripped of everything that it stands for or everything that it could have been. And you're telling me in this moment, I finally got to a place that I should be. You've decided to move on, but I shouldn't have any questions or ask any questions in regard to the why, because we're still figuring out how we fit. So we have to take your word for it, even if you don't want to give us an explanation. Maybe you should be more urgent in your ability to find out what is wrong, instead of trying to calm us down or think that we need to be calmed. When you and the people know silence in them in every way makes them feel as if they do, then if they have to raise their hand even higher than they already have, then you need to see it. It can't be, well, they need to speak up more. Well, at one point they did. You didn't hear them. You didn't recognize it, so they stopped doing it. As black people, when you're in a room of a lot of people that don't look like you think being quiet keeps you in that room. You don't feel empowered because you're not sure of what steps to take. And that's a tough way to navigate or to perform, because we all want to be our best too. This loud and aggressive stereotype is a huge insult to black people, simply because we were never able to have a voice. And the minute we do, you want us to label it as aggressive or loud, but didn't care that we've been silenced for hundreds of years, which is pretty ironic. Just imagine, right? Not being allowed to work where others do. Slavery, never being seen or heard, systematic racism, on, and on. Everything has been unfair forever. And for the first time we speak up or out, we're told to calm down because you think that we're too loud. It's not aggression, people. It's passion. Passion for an opportunity that we're not often given. Passion to work with other people that we don't often get to. Passion to build and motivate people the way we've had to be built and motivated our whole lives to win. Think about those. Okay? I don't want to overwhelm. We've already been about a little over 30 minutes here, so I want to thank everybody as always for listening. Again, we can break this down one conversation at a time. Start to own our bias. Understand how it happened. Understand what we need to do to change it. Expect the education and research to come with it, and become the ally that's necessary as we continue to gain the ground that we need. But if you enjoyed this, please come back and watch part 2 of Microaggressions. There's still some good ones I have left to go over. Built to spread love. That's all I want to do. Find a way to connect people, because connectors of people should be worshipped at the end of the day. Those that just do things because they want others to understand the person next to them a little bit better. And if they do that, what that can do for their state, who they become, how powerful a person professionally, personally, they can continue to build into because they're open to learn, they're willing to admit that things have been better for them, and they're also willing to stand for what's right moving forward. Have a great day, everybody. Again, come back and watch part 2. There's other videos out there as well, but this will be happening on a regular basis. Love each other like I love you. Hollywood Truth, out.